Welcome back. For cattlemen in the West, one of the limiting factors is the availability of forage and grass for their cattle to graze. And as aggressive plants like big sagebrush spread out across rangelands, cattlemen can find their carrying capacity and income potential squeezed. What can be done to manage brush and increase forage? Cattleman to Cattleman reporter Brian Baxter takes us to western Wyoming to find out.
In the Mountain West, big sagebrush is not hard to find. The native plant can quickly take over a landscape and squeeze grass, cattle, and wildlife out. Wyoming rancher Norm Pape and his sons Fred and David know that from firsthand experience.
This sagebrush is in these hilly pastures, and we know that it does take from the grasses. It has to. But before we sprayed, these grasses just weren't there. They may have been there, but they were stunted.
We had 1,000 acres here, and we were down to 300 AUMs on that 1,000 acres. I mean, the brush was covering it. It's close to home. It's really a place where we could utilize when we work cattle in the spring. We need some place to put them, and it got to the point where we were feeding hay clear into June until we could get our cattle moved, the middle of June, because we didn't have any forage out here for those cattle. Now, even though there was some grass in the sagebrush, the cattle couldn't utilize it because they couldn't get to it.
Today, Pape Ranches is home to about 1,000 cows on more than 10,000 acres. The family's been ranching in this area for more than a century, so Norm and his sons grew up on this land, and sagebrush has always been part of their landscape.
We're standing in a pasture on the ranch that is really heavy with sagebrush, and it has been that way as long as I remember. And so I'll have to give credit to Fred and David, my two sons, to come up with the idea that we need to do something about it. In 2003, we decided that we would spike this pasture and divide it up into 4 other pastures and put into place a rotation system. And so in the fall of 2003, a plane came in and spiked this area.
With help from the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS, the Papes applied Spike 20P, a dry pelleted herbicide from Dow AgroSciences that's proven effective in thinning stands of sagebrush, giving grass a chance, while at the same time leaving some brush to the benefit of wildlife and rangeland health.
Of course, the purpose of the spray was to create additional forage, and not only for our cattle, but we place a lot of value on the wildlife. And this pasture is in the wildlife corridor, which is the area by which antelope and deer move.
In years past, the interest was generally in getting rid of sagebrush, because sagebrush consumes water and nutrient resources in here that could otherwise be taken up by the grasses, which we use to feed cattle. But we like to see some sagebrush left on this landscape to benefit those other uses that we now recognize as being important on this landscape. And so the product which has come about that really fits that bill is Spike, which we can apply at varying rates on the landscape, and as a result of using varying rates, we can vary the amount of sagebrush that we take out or that we leave on the landscape.
To achieve the best range health, wildlife habitat, and plant diversity, the goal is to use Spike to reduce but not eliminate the sagebrush, leaving perhaps 10 to 20% in a random pattern called a mosaic.
The mosaic pattern is that you kill some and you leave some. That's really what it amounts to. And we don't want to get rid of all of the sagebrush.
Take a portion of them out, release the nutrients that they would have been consuming to the grass plants, and still have sagebrush. So it really is kind of a win-win tool for folks who have interests other than livestock raising, and we're still answering the objectives that a livestock producer has, in that we have decreased the amount of sagebrush, increased the amount of herbaceous production, the grass plants that feed the livestock.
While some ranchers may use fire or mechanical means in an attempt to control sagebrush, the spike treatment offers more precise, longer-lasting results while not eliminating all the sagebrush.
Certainly, I think there's a benefit by using spike, because you do leave the old dead plant, and when those snows come, and even in the late spring when we get a snow and some wind, it has a tendency to drift over these plants, and that allows that moisture to be retained and further into the spring, and certainly that's a benefit.
And I think people are surprised, and when they're not surprised, they're always pleased with the level of response that you see in the herbaceous plant community when all of a sudden it gets more resources available to it. It's almost like having a gloriously wet spring.
It's increased our carrying capacity by 3 times. Because of that, we can put cattle out here all during the spring while we're working cattle. We don't have to feed them hay, and the fencing that we were required to do with the NRCS has helped us also. It's broke our pastures up a little bit so we can rotate them, utilize this grass better.
What can a rancher do to be successful with sagebrush management? It's critical to do your homework. Talk to the experts, have a clear goal in terms of the desired level of sagebrush control, and then work a plan that includes intensive management of the landscape as it changes.
Improperly managed, after this, you could get an invasion of noxious weeds, and that's certainly not where you want to go. But properly managed, you can wind up with a situation like this where it's almost puts you in mind of a golf course out in here. It's so lush and green, and it's because of the resources that have been freed up out in here.
Success in managing sagebrush also takes patience. The Pape family had spike applied to their land, but had to wait a bit to see the results.
The first year, what in the world did we do? We should have went someplace and played with that money, because there wasn't a lot of indication that we had a kill, and we knew that we were spraying in a mosaic, but really we wanted more kill than what it looked like we were getting. We figure if we could get 70 to 80% kill, that would be good. And then the second year it began to show up, and by the third year we did a pretty good job on this brush.
Now, a few years later, they have no doubts about the value of their investment in working to control sagebrush on their land.
We're selling tons of beef, or pounds of beef, and if we can get a little increase in the weight of those yearlings when they go in the fall by having them on good grass, that's the answer. We're in the business to make money.
Well, yeah, I know it was worth our investment. For yearlings, an AUM is valued at probably about $11 to $14. For a cow calf, probably $17. So, if you figure that up, we've paid for this treatment in 3 years.
On the Pape Family Ranch in Wyoming, I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
To find out more about managing sagebrush and making your rangeland healthier and more productive, visit our website at cattlementocattlemen.org.